I stood frozen in my wedding dress, staring at the woman who'd just walked through the church doors. Vivian Hayes, my husband's ex-girlfriend. She wore a cream-colored dress that caught the light perfectly, her smile radiant as she waved at Dane from across the room. My stomach dropped. I turned to him, my voice shaking. "Dane, why is she here?" He squeezed my hand, not even looking at me. "Relax, Margot. She's just an old friend. This is our day, remember?" But the way she looked at him made my skin crawl. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes made it worse. The ceremony started, but I couldn't focus. Every time I glanced back, Vivian was watching us, with that same sweet smile. During our vows, I heard her whisper something to the guest beside her. They both laughed softly. My hands trembled as I slipped the ring onto Dane's finger. Something was terribly wrong. I could feel it in my bones. When the pastor said we could kiss, I saw Vivian raise her phone and take a photo. My heart pounded in my chest. The reception felt like a nightmare. Vivian floated through the crowd like she belonged there, hugging relatives I'd introduced Dane to, laughing at inside jokes I didn't understand. I watched her touch his arm during conversation, saw how he leaned in to hear her better. My best friend Kendra grabbed my elbow. "Who invited her?" she hissed. "I don't know," I whispered back. My throat felt tight. Dane said she's just a friend now. Kendra's eyes narrowed. "That woman is not just anything, Margot." I tried to push the unease away, focusing on cutting the cake and dancing with my new husband. But when Dane excused himself to take a call, I saw Vivian follow him outside. I stood there, watching through the glass doors as they talked under the garden lights. She touched his face gently, and he didn't pull away. My chest tightened. I wanted to run out there, to demand answers, but my feet wouldn't move. When they came back inside, both were smiling like nothing happened. The next morning, I woke up alone. Dane had left early for a work emergency, at least that's what his note said. I sat in our hotel room, still wearing yesterday's makeup, scrolling through wedding photos people had posted online. Then I saw it. A photo Vivian had shared on her account. It was her and Dane, taken yesterday. The caption read, "Some bonds never break. Congratulations to us on this new chapter." To us. My hands shook as I read it again. I clicked on her profile and found dozens of photos. Her and Dane at dinner 3 weeks ago, at a movie theater 2 months back, at a park I recognized from our neighborhood. All posted while he was supposedly working late or meeting clients. My stomach twisted. I called Kendra immediately. "She's been seeing him," I said, my voice breaking. "This whole time, she's been seeing him." Kendra arrived within an hour, her face set with determination. Kendra sat across from me, her laptop open. "We need to find out exactly what's going on," she said firmly. I nodded, wiping my eyes. We started going through Vivian's social media carefully, taking screenshots of every suspicious photo. The dates lined up perfectly with nights Dane claimed he was working overtime. There were photos from restaurants we'd talked about visiting together, places he said he was too busy to go. One photo showed them at a cabin. I recognized it instantly because Dane had told me he went there alone last month to clear his head before the wedding. "He lied about everything," I whispered. My whole body felt numb. Kendra reached across and squeezed my hand. "We're going to expose this, Margot, but we need to be smart about it." She was right. I couldn't just confront him emotionally. I needed proof, a plan. I needed to understand the full picture before making my move. I took a deep breath and started thinking clearly for the first time since yesterday. I returned home that afternoon, acting normal. Dane was already there, lounging on the couch. "Hey, Mrs. Crawford," he said with a grin, using my new last name. It made me feel sick. I forced a smile. "Hey, how was work?" He launched into some story about a difficult client. and I nodded along, studying his face for any sign of guilt. Nothing. He was so comfortable lying to me. That night, after he fell asleep, I carefully took his phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled as I tried his password. Our anniversary date. It worked. My heart pounded as I opened his messages. I found a thread with Vivian that made my blood run cold. Messages from yesterday morning, before our wedding. "Can't wait to see you today," she'd written. "This is going to be perfect." His response, "Just play it cool. She suspects nothing." I covered my mouth to keep from gasping. There were hundreds of messages going back over a year. Plans, secrets, lies. They'd been together this entire time. I spent the next week pretending everything was fine while gathering evidence. I forwarded messages to my own email, took photos of receipts I found in his wallet, tracked his location using an app Kendra helped me install on his phone. Every discovery felt like another knife in my back, but I stayed calm. I played the happy newlywed perfectly. Dane had no idea I knew anything. Meanwhile, Kendra did some digging into Vivian's background. What she found shocked us both. Vivian wasn't just an ex-girlfriend. She was married. Her husband, Porter Hayes, was a businessman who traveled frequently for work. She'd been living a double life too. "This is bigger than we thought," Kendra said over coffee. "If we expose them, we expose everything." I felt a strange sense of power growing inside me. They thought they were so clever, so careful. But they'd underestimated me completely. I started planning my revenge carefully, piece by piece. It had to be perfect. 2 weeks after my wedding, I decided to meet Porter Hayes. I found his office address through public records and showed up unannounced. His secretary tried to stop me, but I insisted it was urgent. Porter was a tall man, with kind eyes that looked tired. "Can I help you?" he asked, confused. I sat down across from his desk. "Mr. Hayes, my name is Margot Crawford. I married Dane Crawford 2 weeks ago." I watched his expression carefully. "I believe your wife Vivian has been having an affair with my husband." His face went pale. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands. "I suspected something," he finally whispered. But I had no proof. I kept telling myself I was paranoid. My heart ached for him. We were both victims here. I pulled out my phone and showed him everything. The messages, the photos, the receipts. With each piece of evidence, his jaw tightened. When I finished, he looked at me with determination. "What do you want to do about this?" he asked. I smiled grimly. "I want justice, for both of us." Porter and I became unlikely allies. Over the next few days, we shared information and built a complete timeline of Dane and Vivian's affair. It had started 18 months ago, right around the time Dane proposed to me. Every romantic moment I thought we'd shared, every promise he'd made, had been tainted by his secret relationship with her. Porter discovered that Vivian had been using their joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. He'd thought the charges were for spa days with her friends. We both felt like fools, but anger was replacing that shame. We decided to confront them together, but not quietly. We planned an event, a dinner party, at my house. I invited close friends and family, telling Dane it was a delayed wedding celebration. He agreed happily, completely oblivious. I also invited Porter, introducing him as a new friend from work. Vivian didn't know Porter and I had met, so when Dane suggested I invite her too, I agreed sweetly. The stage was set. Everyone would learn the truth at once. The night of the dinner party arrived. Our house was filled with people, laughter, and music. Dane played the perfect host, his arm around my waist, smiling at everyone. Vivian arrived wearing a stunning blue dress, greeting Dane with a hug that lasted too long. I watched Porter's jaw clench from across the room. When everyone had their drinks and the room quieted down, I stood up, tapping my glass. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady. I wanted to gather the people we love most to share something important. Dane looked at me, surprised but pleased. He had no idea what was coming. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the TV screen. "I've put together a special slideshow," I continued, "about love, trust, and truth." The first photo appeared on the screen, Dane and Vivian at dinner. The room went silent. More photos followed, each one showing them together, clearly more than friends. People started whispering. Dane's face went white. "Margot, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight. I ignored Dane and continued. "These photos span the last 18 months. The entire time Dane and I were engaged." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Vivian's face had gone completely pale. She looked at Dane desperately, but he couldn't take his eyes off the screen. Then I played the final piece, audio recordings of their phone calls that I'd managed to retrieve from Dane's cloud backup. Their voices filled the room, intimate conversations, plans to continue seeing each other even after our wedding. "You're my real love," Vivian's voice said through the speakers. "She's just convenient, safe. But you and I, we're soulmates." Dane's recorded laugh followed. "I know, just a few more months, and we'll figure out how to be together permanently." My mother gasped. Dane's father stood up, his face red with anger. Porter walked forward from where he'd been standing in the corner. "Hello, Vivian," he said calmly. She looked at him with pure terror. "Porter, what are you—" "I'm her husband," Porter announced to the room. The revelation hit like a bomb. The room exploded into chaos. My mother started crying. Dane's sister began yelling at him. Vivian tried to leave, but Porter blocked her path. "You're not running away this time," he said firmly. Dane finally found his voice. "Margot, please, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." I laughed, and it came out bitter and cold. "Really? Because it looks like you've been cheating on me our entire relationship. It looks like you married me while planning a future with someone else." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me." Kendra moved to my side protectively. The guests started leaving, uncomfortable and shocked. Some stopped to hug me, whispering apologies and support. Others glared at Dane and Vivian with disgust. Within 20 minutes, only Dane, Vivian, Porter, Kendra, and I remained. Vivian was crying dramatically. "This is all a misunderstanding," she sobbed. Porter handed her a folder. "No, this is divorce papers. Sign them." Her face crumpled, but he showed no sympathy. I pulled out my own folder and handed it to Dane. "Annulment papers. I'm ending this marriage." Dane's hands shook as he looked at the papers. "Margot, we can work through this. I made mistakes, but I love you." His words meant nothing anymore. "You don't love me," I said quietly. "You never did. I was just the respectable choice while Vivian was your passion." Vivian wiped her tears, suddenly angry. "You think you're so perfect, Margot? So innocent? You trapped him with your boring, predictable life." I raised an eyebrow. "I trapped him. He proposed to me. He planned our wedding. He said his vows while texting you." Porter laughed harshly. "And you," he turned to Vivian, "told me you wanted to start a family while spending our money on hotel rooms with him." The four of us stood there, the wreckage of 2 marriages between us. Then Dane tried a different approach. "If you expose this publicly, it'll hurt everyone. Your reputation, your family. Is that what you want?" I smiled, and it wasn't kind. "My reputation? I'm the victim here, Dane. You're the one who should worry." That's when I revealed the next part of my plan. I pulled out another envelope from my bag. "I've already sent copies of everything to your employer, Dane." His face went slack. "What?" Your company has a morality clause in executive contracts. I checked. Adultery, especially when it involves deception and misuse of company time for personal affairs, is grounds for termination. I'd discovered through the phone records that many of their meetings happened during work hours, some at hotels where Dane claimed to be meeting clients. His company took fraud seriously. Dane's voice rose in panic. You can't do this. You'll ruin my career. You ruined our marriage, I replied calmly. Actions have consequences. Vivian turned on him. You said she'd never find out. You promised this was safe. Shut up, Vivian, Dane snapped. Porter stepped forward. I've also contacted your employer, Vivian. The charity organization you work for won't appreciate their fundraising, director having an affair. Donors tend to care about integrity. She started crying again, but this time it seemed real, desperate. Both of them were finally understanding the depth of what they'd lost. Over the next week, everything unraveled for them quickly. Dane was called into his office and suspended pending investigation. Vivian was asked to resign from her position. The story spread through our social circles like wildfire. Some people called me ruthless. Others said I was brave. I didn't care what anyone thought anymore. Porter filed for divorce, and I filed for annulment. But then something unexpected happened. Dane showed up at my door late one night, drunk and desperate. Please, Margot, he slurred. I'll do anything. I'll cut off contact with Vivian. I'll go to therapy. Just give me another chance. I stood in the doorway, unmoved. Why would I do that? Because you loved me once, he said, tears streaming down his face. Because we had something real. I shook my head slowly. We never had anything real, Dane. It was all a lie. He fell to his knees on my porch. I'm losing everything. My job, my reputation. You, please. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered every lie, every betrayal. You should leave, I said, and closed the door. The annulment process moved quickly since we'd only been married 3 weeks. My lawyer was excellent, and with all the evidence I'd gathered, Dane couldn't fight it. But during one of our required mediation sessions, something strange happened. Dane's lawyer presented evidence that shocked me. Mrs. Crawford, were you aware that your husband took out a life insurance policy on you 3 months ago? I felt my blood run cold. What? The lawyer slid papers across the table. A $2 million policy with Dane as the sole beneficiary. My hands trembled as I read through it. Why would you do this? I demanded, looking at Dane. He looked genuinely confused. I didn't. I never signed these documents. His lawyer frowned. The signature is verified by a notary. That's when my lawyer noticed something. The notary's name is Vivian Hayes. The room went completely silent. Suddenly, this wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was something far more sinister. My mind raced through possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. Had Vivian been planning something worse than just stealing my husband? I immediately contacted Porter with this new information. We met at a coffee shop, both of us shaken. A forged life insurance policy? He said, disbelief in his voice. What was she planning? I showed him copies of everything. I don't know, but I'm scared. Porter studied the documents carefully. When was this policy taken out? 3 months ago, right before our wedding. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through old calendar entries. His face went pale. Margot, 3 months ago, Vivian suddenly became very interested in our own life insurance policies. She asked me to increase mine and took out a new policy on herself. My stomach dropped. She was planning something. We decided to go to the police. Detective Ramos listened to our story carefully, examining all the evidence we'd collected. This is serious, she said. Insurance fraud, forgery, possibly conspiracy. I need to bring both Dane Crawford and Vivian Hayes in for questioning. Over the next few days, the investigation expanded. Police discovered that Vivian had been researching untraceable poisons online. My blood ran cold when Detective Ramos told me. I could have died. The police arrested Vivian at her apartment. When they searched her computer, they found even more disturbing evidence. Detailed plans, research on how to stage accidents, searches about inheritance laws. She'd been planning to kill both Porter and me, making it look accidental, so she and Dane could be together with our insurance money. But the twist that shocked everyone came during her interrogation. Vivian claimed Dane knew everything. He planned it with me, she told Detective Ramos. The whole thing was his idea. He wanted Margot's family money. Dane was arrested immediately. He swore he knew nothing about Vivian's plans, that she'd forged his signature on the insurance documents without his knowledge. "I'm not a murderer," he kept saying. "She's insane. I had no idea." The police had to determine who was telling the truth. I sat in Detective Ramos's office, trying to process everything. The man I'd married had either planned to have me killed or had been sleeping with a woman dangerous enough to plan murder without him knowing. Either option was horrifying. The investigation revealed the truth gradually. Phone records showed Vivian had made several calls to Dane discussing the plan. But the recordings were vague enough that Dane could claim she meant their affair, not murder. However, forensic accountants discovered something crucial. Dane had been secretly in massive debt, gambling debts, bad investments, loans from dangerous people. He needed money desperately. My family was wealthy. The insurance policy would have solved all his problems. Detective Ramos laid it out for me. We believed Dane knew about the murder plot but was careful not to leave direct evidence. He let Vivian do the planning, kept himself at arm's length so he could deny involvement if caught. My hands clenched into fists. So he was going to let her kill me. We believe so, yes. But proving it in court will be difficult. That's when I decided to do something risky. I agreed to wear a wire and confront Dane, hoping he'd confess. The police set it up carefully. I visited Dane, where he was being held, telling him I wanted answers. I sat across from Dane in the small interrogation room, the wire hidden under my shirt. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. "Margot," he said, relief flooding his face. "Thank God. You have to believe me. I didn't know what Vivian was planning." I kept my voice calm. "Then help me understand, Dane. The debt, the insurance policy, all those conversations about the plan. What was I supposed to think?" He leaned forward desperately. "The plan was just us being together eventually. After we both got divorced properly. I never wanted you dead. But you needed money," I pressed. "You were drowning in debt." His face cracked slightly. "Yes, but I was going to ask your father for a loan. That was my plan." I shook my head. "A $2 million loan? Right after marrying me?" He would have said no. Dane's hands gripped the table. "I was desperate, Margot, but not desperate enough to murder you." "Then why didn't you tell me about Vivian's research? Her questions about insurance?" His silence stretched too long. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew she was thinking about it, and you didn't stop her." Dane's face collapsed. "I didn't think she'd actually do it," he said, his voice breaking. "She talked crazy sometimes, but I thought it was just talk. Fantasy. So you knew she was talking about killing me, and you said nothing?" My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. "That makes you part of it, Dane." He started crying. "I was going to stop her, I swear. When it got too real, I was going to tell you everything." "When?" I demanded. "After I was dead? After she'd poisoned my food or staged an accident?" "No, before. I just needed a little more time to figure things out. The Wire was capturing everything. His admission that he knew about Vivienne's plans, that he'd stayed silent. It wasn't a full confession to murder, but it was enough to prove he'd been complicit. Detective Ramos later told me it would help their case significantly. But for me, the most important thing was the closure. I finally understood that the man I'd married was not just a cheater, but a coward who'd been willing to let me die for money. I walked out of that room and never looked back. The trial began 2 months later. Vivienne and Dane were tried separately, each trying to blame the other. The courtroom was packed with reporters and curious onlookers. Porter sat beside me every day, both of us needing to see this through. Vivienne's defense tried to paint her as a woman driven mad by obsessive love, claiming diminished capacity. But the prosecution presented her search history, her detailed plans, her purchase of chemicals that could cause heart attacks. The jury looked horrified. When it was Dane's turn, his lawyer argued he'd been manipulated by Vivienne, that he was a victim too. But then the prosecution played my recording, his voice admitting he knew about her dangerous talk, that he'd waited to see if she'd really do it. The courtroom went silent. My testimony was the hardest part. I had to recount every lie, every moment I'd trusted him, every time I'd dismissed my instincts. My voice shook as I described finding the insurance policy, learning about the murder plot. The prosecutor asked me directly, "Did you ever suspect your husband wanted you dead?" I looked right at Dane. "No, I thought he just didn't love me. I never imagined he valued money more than my life." The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. For Vivienne Hayes, guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, forgery. She would spend at least 20 years in prison. She screamed when the verdict was read, blaming Dane, blaming me, blaming everyone but herself. For Dane Crawford, guilty of conspiracy and fraud, though the murder charge was reduced due to lack of direct evidence, he'd actively participated in planning. He would serve 10 to 15 years. When they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. I felt nothing. Porter squeezed my hand. "It's over," he said quietly. But it wasn't quite over yet. The judge addressed the courtroom, announcing that both Dane and Vivienne would be required to pay restitution. Additionally, all insurance policies would be voided and investigated. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. I made a brief statement. "I hope this case reminds people to trust their instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't ignore the signs like I almost did." That night, Kendra threw me a celebration dinner with close friends. For the first time in months, I felt light. 6 months after the trial, my life looked completely different. I'd moved to a new apartment across town, somewhere with no memories of Dane. I'd started therapy to process everything that happened. Some days were harder than others, but I was healing. Porter and I remained friends. We'd been through something terrible together, and that created a bond. We met for coffee once a week, sharing our progress and supporting each other through the difficult emotions. "I'm dating again," he told me one afternoon. "Nothing serious, but it feels good to try." I smiled. "That's wonderful, Porter. You deserve happiness." "What about you?" he asked. "Any interest in dating?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I need more time to trust myself again, to trust my judgment about people." He nodded understandingly. "You'll know when you're ready." My family had been incredibly supportive throughout everything. My mother stayed with me for weeks after the trial. My father helped me untangle the financial mess Dane had left behind. My younger sister Claire made me laugh when I needed it most. "You're the strongest person I know," Claire told me one day. I didn't feel strong, but maybe strength wasn't about never falling apart. Maybe it was about putting yourself back together. Afterward, a year after my wedding day, I stood in front of a room full of women at a survivors support group. I'd been asked to share my story, and after much consideration, I'd agreed. "My name is Margot," I began, my voice steady. "A year ago, I married a man who was planning to have me killed. I told them everything: the affair, the deception, the murder plot, the investigation, the trial. But I also told them about finding my strength, about choosing to fight back instead of becoming a victim. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal," I explained. "It was forgiving myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for trusting someone who didn't deserve it." Many women in the room were nodding, tears in their eyes. But I learned that being trusting isn't a weakness. Being kind isn't a flaw. The problem wasn't with me, it was with him. After I finished, several women came up to thank me, to share their own stories. I realized that my pain had purpose now. I could help others who'd been through similar betrayals. I started volunteering at the support group regularly, becoming a counselor for women escaping dangerous relationships. My nightmare had transformed into meaning. 2 years after everything began, I stood on a beach watching the sunset. I'd taken a solo vacation to clear my head and think about my future. My phone buzzed with a text from Kendra. "How's paradise?" she asked. "Perfect," I replied. Exactly what I needed. I thought about everything that had happened: the pain, the betrayal, the fear, the anger, the justice, the healing. I'd survived something that should have destroyed me. Instead, it had transformed me into someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. I'd learned that revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about truth, about refusing to let someone else's lies define your story. I'd exposed Dane and Vivian not just to punish them, but to protect myself and others they might have hurt. Porter had texted me earlier that week. He was engaged to a wonderful woman who made him happy. I'd felt genuine joy for him. As for me, I wasn't looking for love anymore. I'd found something better. I'd found myself, the woman who could trust her instincts, set boundaries, demand respect, and walk away from anything that didn't serve her well-being. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in years. My story had started with deception and almost ended in tragedy. But I'd rewritten the ending. And this time, I was the author of my own life.